You're listening to the Bulldog Hour, getting you inside the Wilson football program with weekly game previews, recaps, highlights, and interviews. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Bulldog Hour. This is episode 18 of the 10th season here on the show, but I'm not here by myself. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Justin Raffoff.
Yeah, it's good to be here. We'll leave it at that.
Unfortunately, Justin, it is the end of the line for us because the 2024 Wilson Bulldogs season came to an unfortunate end yesterday. There may have been a loss, but it was certainly not. It's certainly a season we'll not forget anytime soon because it was a great season. They went up against an opponent that was going to be a tough out. Everyone knew that. Didn't go their way, and we'll get into that. But 2024 will be remembered fondly.
Yeah, and that's as we move on from yesterday, that'll settle in much clearer to those who it matters the most too. It's hard yesterday. I'm sure it's hard today, and tomorrow when you don't have practice and all of those things will be tough. But as we move away, and honestly, tonight we'll start to shift to this probably a little bit of kind of just like reflecting on what it was for the season, and there are countless positives about that. So
yeah, and we're gonna get into a lot. Obviously, we're gonna recap the district championship game. We'll talk about it, go over it like we normally do. Probably won't take as much time as we usually focus on it.
No, we're good.
yeah, we don't like to dwell on that, especially with the season coming to an end. But we want to, look back fondly on the rest of the season. Kind of do not like a week by week breakdown, but just kind of go through things that we saw, things that we experienced, everything that happened throughout the season. We started this journey ourselves personally back in February. We had sports psychologist Jess Kamoff on the show. Feels like forever ago.
That does not feel like this quote-unquote season.
Right, but I mean, it technically was. It was the start of our 10th season. Now, we didn't do a show in April or June, but by the time we came back at the end of July, things had already kicked into gear, and there were a lot of questions surrounding the team, and we'll get into that as we recap and wrap up the 2024 season. But first off, I do want to, for one last time in 2024, want to thank our sponsors here at the Bulldog Hour. Primarily these three groups of people. First off, my dad, Bill Mays and Mays Sandwich Shop, Mike Drago and the MikeDragoSports.com group, as well as White Star Tours, all of them for presenting the show this season. They will carry over into the winter and spring. I usually don't reset the annual sponsorships until the next football season actually begins. So usually end of July and August, that's where we kind of start with a clean slate. But I definitely want to shout them out one last time here for being a big part of what we were able to do here at the Bulldog Hour in 2024, our 10th season on the air. And in addition to them, and don't want to forget the other sponsors, especially the individuals and families that helped us out here, including the Miller family, our buddy Andy Herr, and then, of course, our three anonymous donors. All have been with us for a very, very long time.
Yeah, big shout out to them. Thank you very much.
So if you know me, you know that I'm already looking forward to our next show, Justin.
Yes.
What tentatively scheduled for the last Sunday in February, that's kind of become our thing, is to kick off our next season about 3 months after this season ends. Usually that people are already getting antsy by the end of, basketball is wrapping up, the winter sports wrestling season, indoor track. Winter season is winding down at that part.
Yeah.
If you're lucky enough to be playing in March, you had a really good year.
Yes.
In your winter sports season. But once people start thinking about lacrosse and baseball and softball and track and field, you could start to say, oh, the weather's going to be getting nicer and I'm ready for football. At least that's how I look at it. I love going to photograph those spring sports, but I'm already thinking about, like, once May comes, I'm in football mode. So February is kind of the appetizer for that, and that's when Justin and I will debut season 11. I have non-football guests because people that I'm thinking about inviting on the show are not directly football related, and the first show may be just tangentially related to Wilson football. It might be more Wilson focused, the things that I'm thinking about doing. We'll see what happens. Obviously, we lead off the show with a whole bunch of football stuff, whatever happens. A lot of the awards will come out after this show. So we'll have to recap who won, Burks Awards, LL Awards, if there's any state awards, all that stuff will happen. And we will talk about that in February. But it's usually a lighter show, kind of a little bit more off topic than what we're used to when we kick off the next season. And then we'll start to really hammer on the upcoming season in April and June if we get those shows in, if anything warrants happening. I mean, a few years ago, Justin, we were talking about the Burks LL merger stuff.
Right.
There were non-league schedules changing. There, all this kind of stuff. Well, that hasn't really happened recently,
right?
We didn't have the scheduled news. Like last year, it was over the holidays that we finally got the scheduled news. Well, guess what? Next year the schedule's the same. It's just flip-flopping home and away. So there's not even that stuff to talk about. So that's why February will be a little bit different, and then we'll see if we have any content to come your way throughout the spring. But Justin and I will be back for season 11. It's actually our 10th anniversary next year, Justin, as we started the show crazy. In 2015. So 2025 will be the 10th anniversary of the show. So we'll see if we have any way that we can celebrate that in a fun fashion. But no plans right now, but if anyone has ideas, hit me up. Someone who had a great idea this past week, though, was Jeff. I have no idea how to pronounce his last name, Jeff G. From parents, parent of a player. I will butcher the last name. I've heard it said, and I never can remember how to say it, so I apologize to Jeff. But he reached out to me about putting together a video of past alumni champs and support and encourage the current team as they embark on the district championship. And I said, hey, put it together. We'll get it posted. We reached out to a bunch of people, posted across social media, followed up with a lot of people, and there's a good turnout. And he and his crew put together a great video. It was about 15 minutes long of a lot of past players, a lot of them recent too, in like the last 10 years, which is great because I'm sure a lot of the players on the team now, they may have even been teammates with some of them, or they grew up watching a lot of them play football at Gursky Stadium. So want to thank Jeff and the crew for putting that together. I know he had people editing that, and he was working on it for a while to get that out. And it was a really cool thing to add to this season. And it was awesome to hear from those alumni guys, how much Wilson football still means to them, that they'll take the time out of their day to record that and reflect fondly on Wilson football.
And I saw a lot of them in the stands yesterday, which was cool to see.
Absolutely. So, I think that's about it for announcements and what's going to be happening here in the off season. So Justin, let's jump into a quick District 3 6A championship recap. It was played yesterday, Saturday, November 23rd at Exeter. Kickoff 1:00. There was a morning send off with the buses, which you and I were both at. We attended that. It was great to have the cheerleaders there and lots of friends and family with signs. It was really cool, and I posted pictures from the album to that. It was awesome for Officer Brownback, Trooper Brownback, to have his vehicle there to lead the way, and Spring Township Police also joined in, and it was really fun. It was a great thing to do. I love when things like that come about organically and are spearheaded by parents and whatnot. It adds a great dimension to the season. Something that the coaches don't have to worry about. If you want to do something for our team, that's awesome. But they're not going to have the time to focus on something like that. So it's great when other clubs or groups or parents and friends of the program step up in that manner, just like Jeff did, and then the parents that organize the send-off. So great job by them all season long. It was an excellent job from the cheerleaders, the band, and the parents this year. Everyone was behind the team throughout the season. It was great to see. So the game, it got bad quickly for Wilson. It didn't go their way. I mean, we talked about it, Justin. Honestly, I sometimes forget what we've said off air and what we said
I know.
on the show, but they had to play a flawless game. There is a very, very small margin for error because of the Titan they were going up against. Harrisburg has become the class of District 3. Especially, I mean, over the last decade, they've been very good, 10 to 12 years. Just a few years after Coach Everett got there, they turned that program around and became, a kingpin in the Mid-Penn, in the Commonwealth Division. It's one of the toughest leagues in the state,
and honestly,
year in, year out.
I was going to say, honestly, they've become one of the premier 6A schools, and definitely, if you cut that down to public schools,
right,
they definitely are one of the premier programs.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. You're 100% correct on that. So we knew going in that they had a handful of D1 recruits, multiple guys already verbally committed to Penn State. Another possibility of going there. Someone going to Syracuse.
Always tears at me.
Well, I know.
Oh, that's awesome.
That one does hurt. We always say, we wish them the best once they've
played
their last game. The problem, Justin,
I know there's a huge
we
problem.
have another year to go with all of them, I believe, at least the ones that are on Penn State's verbal commitment or on the short list to become Nittany Lions are all back next year. So that team is not going anywhere.
No.
So, and Coach Dumb's already mentioned that in his post game. Hey, you want to get back to the peak, the mountain, you want to raise that district trophy, you're going to have to go through them some way.
Yep.
So that was kind of the motivational talk to the underclassmen, saying it's time to step up and get to work because we've got the section championship this year, but if you want the district championship, they're going to be in your way and you're going to have to rise to the occasion, and it's going to be a tough battle. But Wilson deferred in they won the coin toss and deferred. They were able to stop the Cougars on their first possession. Wilson didn't get anything going on offense and then had a high snap on a punt. Now, Christo did a good job of corralling the football,
minimizing the damage,
getting the pass off, moving the ball closer to midfield, but it still wasn't able to turn the field, try to pin Harrisburg deep in their own territory.
In what should have been a punt with the wind.
Right,
so you're hoping that you can maybe pin them back at least a little bit.
You would hope, but that didn't happen. So disappointing start for sure off the bat, and that's one of those things immediately you and I both said, you don't have a lot of
when we're sitting
mistakes
there
and
we've talked about how you need to minimize the mistakes, and you already had a big mistake right off the start, and you're like, again, it wasn't the worst case scenario. The worst case, is that
blocked and returned for a touchdown,
or something like that. But you're already like, ooh, that's already a mistake. And we said we're going to need to be flawless, and you're just like, all right, well, here we go.
Yeah, I mean, defense looked good on that first series.
Yeah.
They
gave up the one long play.
They gave up
not long, but like the third down.
16-yard pass on 3rd and 8 wasn't ideal. But they stopped the rushing attack. They forced Lewis to throw an incomplete pass on 4th and 2. Offense just couldn't do anything. And then the issue with the punting after the snap set Harrisburg up to drive down from the Wilson side of the field. I think they started on the 45.
Yeah, it was right at the 45.
But again, they stopped the quarterback rush for no gain on first down, but then Lewis hit Brandon for a 15-yard pickup on 2nd down. Mickens and Brandon had back-to-back, or actually 3 rushes in a row from Mickens, Brandon, and Mickens picked up 20 yards. And then a couple plays later, Mickens took it in on outside 7 yards for the score. The biggest thing, and I was told this by Bruce Badgley, that Harrisburg has better special teams this year than they've had in the past, including a kicker. They used to always go for 2. There wasn't even like an opportunity for them to kick. It didn't matter. They also usually didn't have a great punter. None of that was true this year with Harrisburg, and I believe those guys are all back next year because I think Koch was the punter.
Yes.
He's the punt returner and the punter.
I don't think we forced them to punt.
Yes, Bruce told me that he was the punter.
Yeah.
So, but Fasanya, I believe, is also back as well. He was the place kicker.
Yeah.
So 7-0. Harrisburg goes up. Wilson starts their neck drive, and again 3 and out, unable to get anything going. Just picked up a couple yards on an Akings rush, but then rushed or sacked for a loss of yards, and then Christo has to punt again. This one he's able to get off, but Harrisburg starts their next series, runs through the end of the first quarter. So it's just 7-0 at the end of the first quarter, hanging, but you could feel that they were getting the momentum, and they were driving on us, and they were not allowing us to drive on them at all. At the beginning of the second quarter, they already have it inside the Wilson 10-yard line. They're facing a goal-to-go situation, and Mickens rushed in from 3 yards out. I think it might have been the first play of the second quarter.
Yeah. So on first down at the end of the first quarter, we actually stopped him for a loss, I think.
Yeah, it lost 2 yards.
Right.
Forced
And
them back
so-
to the 7.
Right. But then we had too many guys to start, and so it moved it half the distance. So it's basically like 3.5. And they scored then on that first play.
So spotting them 2 touchdowns to start the game was not the way you wanted it to begin.
No.
Just because you knew how.
Well, and again, the little things, like we talked about how, you got to be mistake free. Well, we are going, and you stop them for 2 yards, and you're like, oh well, maybe we can hold them to a field goal. And you're getting ahead of yourself because they've got a few downs left. But then to move them half the distance, so instead of basically like a loss, it ended up essentially that the first down was a gain. And again, any one thing wasn't necessarily the biggest. Like, is that a backbreaker? No, but like
when you add it all up,
when you add
it's
up
a
the little things
cumulative
in a
effect.
game where you needed to be perfect or darn near close to it, the little things add up.
Right. So they go up 14-0. Now Wilson put a drive together, though. Immediately, anytime an opponent scores, you and I are always like, gotta answer.
Yeah.
And Wilson, we thought Wilson was going to do that. Started at their own 34, got a face mask penalty, moved the ball to midfield, started moving things a
couple of
little
these face
bit with
masks were
Corral.
away from the ball too.
Right.
A few of these were away from the ball. Yep.
A few nice plays by Corral, had a few nice one-handed grabs on when Maddox was scrambling, looking for an out. Found Corral a few times, and they were nice one-handed grabs. So,
And Maddox like buying time with his feet.
Right. He was needing to do that often. But Akings helped them to get down to the 25. Then Greer and Gruber had a few rushes, picked up some yards, and another personal foul penalty on Harrisburg to get a goal-to-go situation. So it was 1st and goal at the 5, and 3 straight Akings rushes netted a total of 2 yards. Lost 2 on the first, picked up 4 on the next time. Harrisburg took a timeout on 4th and goal from the 3. So what are you doing here? Are you taking points? Are you trying to kick into the win for a field goal? They're up 14-0 and they're a dangerous offense. Are you going for the touchdown? Wilson didn't really hesitate at all. No. They were going to try to score.
Yep. And I honestly feel like you have to.
Oh, I do too. I didn't.
You're already down 14. Field goals aren't going to cut it. The wind was crazy. You need a touchdown there, So it's one thing if you're talking your Central York last week and you can hit it from 50-some yards, like that's different. But down, you get that close, you need a touchdown.
You need to score. Unfortunately, the Maddox Gruber's pass was intercepted. He rolled out, trying to avoid pressure. Got unfortunately boxed in on the short side of the field. Is rolling out as the right-handed quarterback. Whole bunch of Cougars defenders back there. Tried to throw across the field into the back of the end zone. It was picked off. Honestly, I thought for a second the guy was going to attempt to run it out.
I was hoping he would.
Well, I was hoping he would too, because I don't think he would have broken it. There was a lot of Wilson guys in and around the area that he was going to, but his teammates were yelling at him, get down, and good for them. That was the right move.
Right.
But stops the Wilson scoring opportunity instead of making it possibly a 14-7 game, although that with the win could be an issue, as we'll see later. Turns it into 14-0, and Harrisburg has the ball with about halfway through the second. So now you're thinking, okay, well, they're pinned pretty deep on their own 20. Get a stop, get the ball back, maybe score before halftime. Well, unfortunately, Harrisburg had other ideas. They went to Sheffy this time. Mickens was playing a lot on defense, being a huge disruptor to the Wilson offense, who surrendered 4 sacks, 3 of them to Mickens. He's only the Mid-Penn Defensive Player of the Year. Yeah. So obviously we get to see that on full display of why he was crowned that by the Mid-Penn. But Sheffy ran 3 times for 28 yards. Then Lewis had an incomplete pass. Harrisburg took a timeout. It's at midfield on their side still at the 48. Wilson had done a decent job stopping the ground game by and large, forcing them some passes. They would come up with a big play here or there. They'd be, cut it to a second or third and short, and then they'd pick it up, but hadn't yet given up the big play. But that would come here. Yeah. And one of last year's big time players for them, Nehemiah Ewell, found some kind of space on the left side. It was
like counter-like action too, because all the motioning and everything was looking to the Harrisburg sideline, like to the right of the offense.
He came back left
and
found an open spot, and there was no one catching him. So Ewell took to 52 yards. Fasania's kick was good. So Wilson's up Harrisburg's up 21-0, and that's a backbreaker. Yeah, because you went from maybe cutting it 14-7,
14-point swing.
Yeah, it felt like
a few plays.
It did. It was really deflating. Really deflating. But once again, Wilson tried to punch back, and you're thinking if they score before half and they get the ball after halftime, you could be right back in this game. And that's what ended up happening. Monty Greer had a nice return on the kickoff, got it to the Wilson 42. Carell had a short rush, but then Wilson had a holding penalty, so they're facing 1st and 18, but Maddox was able to find Cam Zulinger for 13 yards. Carell and Gruber rushed for 5 yards, picking up the first down on back-to-back plays. Gruber found Brady Klein, who made a great diving catch for 13 yards on 3rd and 7. Maddox then found a few plays later Monty Greer, who also made a fantastic catch for 17 yards, and Wilson set up at the Harrisburg 13. After a penalty on Harrisburg, Wilson has in a goal-to-go situation. So they're at their 7, and they're going to get a few shots here at the end zone now. First, Maddox rushed for a loss. Wilson took a timeout because now it's under a minute to go in the half. Harrisburg came back with a penalty. Gruber rushed again to cut it to 4th and goal from the 2. And what are you going to do here? What are you calling? Well, they're going to go in the short yardage situation, but there's so many different options they could do from that. Who's going to get it? Well, they went in that, but they didn't give the ball to anyone. We kind of flash back to the Nazareth situation where Maddox had a bunch of keepers for touchdowns in that game. He did eventually pull one out and loop around kind of on boot action, which I thought we could possibly see that, but with Harrisburg's team speed, I wasn't sure it was going to work like it would, especially since it's now been on film for an entire 12 weeks now. But Gruber just kept it kind of, their version of a tush push, him trying to dive in, and eventually was called a touchdown. The officials running in from the side. Unfortunately, the kick would fail. I didn't get a good angle or reason as to what happened there, if there was pressure or what, but the kick failed. Halftime comes, and it's 21-6. But like we said, you're getting the ball to start the second half. Right. If you can put a drive together and score, it's a brand new ball game. But unfortunately, things kind of started in the second half the way they did for Wilson in the first half. They didn't get a good series first time with the ball in either half. Started with a botched snap, issues with the snap, forcing Wilson into a 2nd and 26. Despite another nice grab from Carell Akings to cut it to 3rd and 17, Maddox was sacked on the next play, giving them 4th and 25, deep in their own end zone. And at this point, it's 21-6, early second half, but you haven't stopped Harrisburg other than the first series. You haven't stopped them in every ensuing drive. It was either a touchdown or end of half. So Coach Doms opts for a fake punt, which is completed, but not for enough Oh wait, no. Am I off on that?
Yeah, it
I'm
was
sorry.
incomplete.
Is that the next one?
Yeah, it's the next one.
Okay, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm a drive ahead. They did punt the ball, but in just a few plays, it's the Elias Koch 37-yard touchdown.
Right.
So now it's 28-6. Wilson gets the ball back again. Issues on offense with penalties and plays for loss, whether it's a sack or just rushes stopped behind the line of scrimmage. Incomplete passes lead to a Wilson punt attempt at their own 10. It's called for a fake. Nothing happens. Cam's not able to pull in the pass. Harrisburg takes over, and then, of course, the next play is another touchdown. All of a sudden, you started the second half thinking, okay, let's drive down the field and cut this to a one-score game. And just, not even 6 minutes later, it's 35-6, and the wheels have fallen off.
Yeah, and that pretty much was it. There was some back and forth after that, but you needed, like we said, the margin for error was so thin, very small, and just too many of the little things. And it's hard. It's hard to kind of differentiate because like some of that is just forced by your opponent, right? Like some of that's forced by your opponent. But some of it is self-inflicted too. There were some self-inflicted mistakes that we did. And, you play a lot of games where that doesn't matter. We've had some times this season where it could have mattered, but, we were able to make up for it or do something. But that wasn't the way it went yesterday. And that happens. It's tough. And I know we've talked about this a lot, but, for all the teams that are playing football in November, in Pennsylvania, 6 of them get to end with a win.
Right.
That's just the way it goes.
It's going to end for a loss for a lot of teams. There's over 550 football teams in the state. As of Friday afternoon, there were only 48 still playing. There's even less now. There's 24. We're down to 24. 4 in each classification. So things didn't get much better. Wilson gave up a touchdown on their next defensive series, 42-6. Third quarter ends. Wilson is driving at this point at the end of the third quarter and is able to get another touchdown on another nice reception by Michael Glover on a pass from Maddox Gruber. 42-14. Wilson tried an onside kick, almost got it. It bumped into Christo Hunsiker, the kicker, just before it went 10 yards. Yeah. So it was eventually Harrisburg's ball. And at that point, Harrisburg had their backups in. I believe they had already had their backups in earlier in the fourth quarter. Wilson's touchdown, I believe, came in against mostly Harrisburg backups, and Harrisburg's reserves and backups played the offense the rest of the way, and there was no more scoring. So the final score was 42-14, and Wilson falls to Harrisburg again. It's just an ongoing theme here of late, which is unfortunate, but hey, to be the best, you got to beat the best, and right now it's Harrisburg.
Well, that's what people are saying. I'm like, Harrisburg's really good. They are, but when you phrase it as, well, yeah, we are going to play a really good team in the district championship game, or also the district championship / state quarterfinal game.
Right.
Like that's just there are no bad teams left.
No.
And I was explaining that the teams that might luck into the playoffs or have a good run because they don't play anybody, they're gone after a round or two of the playoffs. Like they're gone. And so
they're not making it into the Elite Eight in the state.
They're not.
The state Elite Eight.
So by the time you get to that point, you're going to have to beat really good teams. And that being said, I feel like Harrisburg beat a really good team. This Wilson team was really good. They were really good.
Yeah.
We just on Saturday we weren't good enough to beat Harrisburg.
That wasn't an A game, and you needed your A+ game.
Yeah, you did
to win that game, and that's not what we got. And it's unfortunate. Obviously, you got to give credit to Harrisburg for having those guys in the schemes and doing what they did, because it wasn't. And we're going to talk statistics here. It was not a one-man show.
No,
this wasn't I know a lot of people were talking throughout the regular season, especially in the playoffs, that you got to stop Mickens. He's the guy. Well, guess what? Messiah Mickens, he had 30 rushing yards.
Right.
Now, he scored 2 touchdowns. They were short, though. They weren't the big runs.
Right.
But other guys were the ones that were backbreakers.
And he made his presence felt on the
defense,
other side of the ball.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. But Ewell had 1 carry, 52-yard touchdown.
Yep.
Sheffy had 5 carries, He ended up with a touchdown, only 40 yards. But one of the real, Wilson was already down 35-6, but when Brannon took the jet sweep and was essentially untouched, what was it, 30 yards? Just it's not your day.
Right.
It's just not your day. They rushed for 180 yards total as a team. Ewell led the way with 52. So they spread the ball around. They didn't get bogged down when Mickens wasn't getting a lot of big rushes like they were accustomed to seeing. Lewis only attempted 7 passes, but he completed 5 of them for 126 yards. Koch only had 3 catches, but 110 yards.
Yeah.
110 yards and a touchdown. And he was the guy that ruined the day more than Mickens did. You know, everyone all the previews talked about how Mickens ran all over Township, and I'm sure the game before that as well when they played Dallastown.
Right.
Mickens was the guy. He wasn't the guy here. They didn't need him to be. I mean, he was the guy on defense,
right?
But on offense, it was really Koch. Those 3 passes,
right.
Each one of those picked up a first down or scored a touchdown.
Yep.
So that was rough. But you knew someone was going to be a big guy. A lot of people thought it would be Mickens, but it ended up being the passing game, which has been hit or miss for them at points throughout the year. But kudos to Lewis and Koch. They had a connection and they made things work. That was a tough one for the Bulldogs. Speaking about Wilson here, not a lot to go on the ground. Wilson rushed 30 times for 26 yards. Now, again, sacks count
right.
against us, and also we had a snap that got away.
Right.
So a lot of that hurts. I think right there you're looking at minus 29 some yards there. But Greer rushed for 37, Akings rushed for 18. Gruber did get the rushing touchdown. Mattis was 12 of 20, 133 yards and a score. He was sacked multiple times. I think it was 4 times during the game. Once again, spreading the ball around, though. Zulinger and Akings each had 3 receptions. Greer and Hunsaker each had 2 receptions. Glover had the touchdown. And it talked about Klein had the big catch on Wilson's scoring drive. Defensively, we talked about Mickens already for Harrisburg. 3 sacks, 4 tackles for loss. Quincy Brannon, who had the jet sweep touchdown, was all over the field on defense. He was number 7. He had 6 tackles for them. And then sophomore linebacker Derek Brown, number 12, 5 tackles, also very, very active for the Cougars. Speaking of Wilson, familiar name at the top of the tackles list, E.J. Brown back at linebacker, 7.5 for him, including half for loss. Brady Klein had 5, including 1 for loss, and Christo Hunsaker 5.5 total, 1.5 for loss. So your 3 linebackers were active and busy. They came up with 18 tackles and 3 of those for loss. So flying around the field at linebacker for the Bulldogs were Brownback, Klein, and Hunsaker. So Justin, it was a tough for us to figure out player of the game. Kind of trying to figure out what stood out to us. It was difficult. It was difficult to figure out where we wanted to go.
Couldn't really get much going on either side of the ball, but in
the end, it comes down to one spot, and we can kind of consider this as maybe a season award too for biggest impact, and that has to go to quarterback Maddox Gruber. He had the hand in both touchdowns, rushed for the first, threw the other into Mike Glover, but by and large, throughout the season, he was a steadying hand and a force on both sides of the ball. But his emergence at quarterback this year this season wouldn't go the way that it went without him playing the way he did.
No, exactly.
So.
He is the reason the team got this far. There were other reasons, and they had lots of great players step up this year.
Yeah, we're going to talk about a few of them.
But for such a question mark, no one really knew what to expect at the quarterback position coming into the year, just because you were losing a 2-year starter in Tommy. And so no one really knew where that was going to go. And Maddox to step up and to grow into the quarterback and the playmaker he became. I say playmaker. Remember that catch he had last year, that one-handed catch was
Yes,
absolutely
ridiculous.
absurd. So he's been making plays, but he's just was on the other end of making a bunch of those plays this year. He and his leadership and so throughout the season and honestly even in the game, it was frustrating. The guys were frustrated. They wanted to do better, but to be able to kind of keep going and give it everything they've got. That's all you can really ask. At some point, it's going to come to a close, but Maddox certainly was one of the leaders of this team.
For sure, and he finished the season with 2,018 passing yards, so he eclipsed the
awesome.
2,000-yard passing mark. And maybe that doesn't sound like a lot because you're used to hearing NFL numbers of 4,000 or 5,000. I think nine or 10 people have thrown for over 5,000 yards in an NFL season. But it's a pretty big deal in high school football, at least in Pennsylvania. Yeah. And it's actually how many times do you think a quarterback has thrown for over 2,000 yards at Wilson?
I'm going to say 5.
He is the 7th.
Okay.
You want to name the guys that have done it?
Well, Chad did it.
Chad did it in 2002.
Okay.
2088.
Okay. Tony Cipolla.
He came close. Oh. He had 1899.
Okay. Well, see, are we talking people who are we talking during Bulldog era or pre? I'm sure there might be both here. But
you mean like being called the Bulldogs?
Bulldog show
Hour.
Era.
Okay.
Sorry.
So there is only one player on this list that did it while we were broadcasting the show. No, I'm sorry, two. We started in 2015. There is someone else.
Powers.
So Powers did not quite get there.
Okay. I knew he had a great year.
41 in 2015 2015. So he was actually right behind Tony Cipolla. Templin is not listed on here, which shocks me.
No, I cannot. Okay. I cannot name it.
You should because he just played last year.
Oh, Tommy.
Tommy had 22-31 last year. Second most ever.
That's awesome.
Most ever is Zach Zweizig in 2009.
Yeah, I think I would have gotten that one.
Seth Klein. So during my time here, but not during the show.
See, and that's where that's fuzzy to me because I'm like, oh, and I had Seth in class, so I don't know.
Yeah, Seth Klein is third with 2,133. You said Chad in his junior year, my senior year, 2088. Connor Uhrig in 2016, last district championship win, 2,050. You missed the big one. Kerry Collins.
Well, yeah, I would have gotten there. I went to the new guys, and then I got discouraged and just stopped guessing.
He was the first ever to do it at Wilson, 2,043 yards in the 1989 season where Wilson went to the state championship.
Well, and there's a reason. You think about it. It happened that year, and then it didn't happen again for a while. Right. And then it has happened a lot since. But the
offenses have changed
high school,
a lot in the last
high school offenses
years,
has changed a lot.
Years.
Yes.
Yeah. Could you imagine Kerry Collins in a spread type offense? No. Would be interesting to see where he would end up. I mean, I know things had started to change when Chad was there. Kentafia was much more wide open than Slemmer or Gursky. Definitely.
But again,
Gursky,
we talk about this all the time. But also, the weapons allowed for it.
Right.
Man, there were some weapons on those teams.
Yeah, for sure. So congratulations. Sorry for the little detour there, but congratulations to Maddox Gruber for breaking 2,000 yards passing as a senior and becoming, what did I say, just the sixth or seventh guy to do it at Wilson?
I think 7. Yep.
So pretty big deal, but back-to-back guys to do it. Hunsaker last year, Gruber this year. So
it's pretty cool.
Really, really cool. Correll was over 1,000 yards rushing. I believe he was there last week. But stayed there. I think with 2 years ago, didn't Cam Jones finish with 999 rushing yards because of the Harrisburg game? I think he ended up losing some yardage in the district semifinal and didn't end up having 1,000-yard rushing season. So trying to see if anything else jumps out. So Mike only ended up with one catch yesterday. He did get another touchdown, though.
It was a great
catch. I did get a nice picture of that. I didn't transfer my second half photos to my phone right away, so I didn't get to post any. But I put it up on the album, which are all available. Trying to see some defensive statistics here. So EJ for the season finished with 73.5 tackles, 17 for loss, 4.5 sacks. He tied with Cam Zollinger for the lead in sacks. Both of them had 4.5. Maddox led the way with interceptions, I believe, with 5. Aiden Kramer and Monty Greer had 2. Monty had 11 pass breakups. Maddox Gruber had 10 pass breakups. Brady Klein and Mel Gaston were credited with 2.5 sacks apiece. Yeah. 63 tackles for Christo Hunsaker. He was second on the team. Third on the team was actually safety Chase Herb with 45 on the season. Brady Klein rounded up the guys breaking 40 for the year at 42. So, all right, Justin, anything else you want to say about Harrisburg?
No, I mean, it was obviously wasn't the outcome we wanted. The guys fought hard, just didn't happen yesterday, and that's how it goes sometimes. But nothing to hang their heads about. And like I said, as they move away, I think they'll realize this was a team that still accomplished a lot. They won the section. They beat Mifflin. They went undefeated in the section. Won a couple playoff games. Got to earn a couple more home games.
That was a big one.
Well, and like some of those things, not necessarily those streaks, but like when you talk about, is this going to be the first class to not win a section title at Wilson?
Well, they took that to heart.
And are they going to be the first one to not win a district playoff game? Like all of those things.
I'm glad,
or win a home district game, those types of things, and they did all of that.
That's all stuff for history books and talking points for people like us, fans
Right.
and alumni. But I like that the group embraced those legacy defining things for them. That even if it's just a small group that probably really matters for. It's great. Writing and talking points for media to put up in there, for Mike Drago and Paul Roberts and Jim Berkman to Jeff Reiner to pull out and throw in an article, this class hasn't won, such and such, like you said. I'm glad they use that as a motivational tool in the offseason and throughout this season of not getting a lot of respect. I appreciate them taking that to heart. It was great to see so many of the guys step up. Because we had a lot of question marks going into this season of what was going to happen. Whenever you don't have a returning guy at quarterback, that's always a big deal. Whenever you are losing a big senior class to graduation, even if, and I don't remember, I think there were some 20-some guys last year. And, not everyone plays in each class or has a huge impact. But the larger the senior class, usually the more leadership you have. So losing a big graduating class, usually there's a hit there, but I don't think they missed the beat at all. Honestly, I feel like this was one of the better student-led teams of the last few seasons. You got to give a lot of credit to guys like Cam Zulinger and Derek Reininger and Maddox Gruber, Brady Klein, Christo Hunsaker. These guys to step up. And then, we said we were going to talk about them. Our favorite thing is what seniors are going to step up that maybe didn't play a lot last year or as underclassmen. Who's going to make an impact because those guys I just mentioned were all players last year.
Right.
They were all starters or significant contributors in some way, maybe at a different position, but they were contributors in some manner. Who are the guys that didn't play much as sophomores and juniors that are all of a sudden going to have a big impact on the team? And off the top of my head, I immediately think of 2 linemen in Junior Catul and Cam Cook.
Yeah.
The two of them, what they were able to do, they ended up almost kind of in a timeshare at the beginning of the year at offensive guard, but then Junior kind of stepped up defensively and became a key piece along the defensive line at defensive tackle that he spent less and less time on offense. And Cam took over the role.
Yep.
And they both kind of grabbed onto those individual roles to help make the team better.
Right.
And you need that every single year. It's our favorite topic to ask both the coaches and the players before the season starts. And you and I talk about it all the time.
We talk about that a lot.
Who
In
is
terms
gonna
of like
be
the
that
topics
guy?
that come up, that is one. Like, who is the guy who is going to step up? And those guys definitely did. And have Geloso on the line too. Like,
Absolutely.
right? Like,
Getting him back was phenomenal.
right. Like, but
he's a guy that I don't even think of like not
Right,
being around
right,
last year. It's unfortunate that he wasn't, because imagine like having that cohesion coming back.
But man, like, yeah, those guys who, for just different reasons, were not necessarily the biggest contributors last year, but step up and have huge seasons. And again, like we said about Maddox, because it's obvious. It's a little more obvious. It's what everybody can see. But like, the team isn't there without the contributions from those guys. Like, they're not making it to the district championship game without guys like Junior and Geloso and Cam. Like,
yep,
God,
100%.
like, all stepping up.
Thank you for bringing
into
up
those
Geloso,
spots.
because I would have felt bad not mentioning him, because he absolutely, unfortunately, having to miss last year, but then coming back and being the guy that he was, and having the arm issues all year long and just powering through.
Right. And like, kind of spinning that forward, like, that's what we need now. Like, there were a bunch of young guys that got a lot of experience this year. There was a mix of guys who stepped up and guys who had experience, but there's a lot of young guys who got experience this year. But there's got to be more. Like, there's got to be some guys who maybe didn't get a ton of time this year, but who maybe got some, that step up and fill in those spots, because those seniors, they move on.
When I think entering the year, we knew the only lineman back was Derek.
Yeah.
He was offensively speaking.
Yes.
Well, the only offensive lineman back was Derek. And that's what we had talked about throughout our interviews in August, of how important the tight end room was going to be. Right. Spoiler, it was hugely important all year long.
And man, did they
I think they exceeded expectations.
I was going to say,
for them.
Think about it though. We were like, man, the expectations of this room of that group is huge. And they exceeded it. They cleared the bar.
Yeah.
They cleared the bar.
Right, because you saw the development of Michael Glover into like the pure tight end that you want to have on your team.
Right.
The big body that can block and catch.
Right.
Then you have do-it-all Christo, who didn't play as much on offense this year because of the ability to have Michael Glover on the field,
and having
Brady Klein on the field, Cam Zulinger on the field. Christo, was a mainstay at defense, and he had his opportunities.
Well, how many
on offense.
a number of times this year, he walloped guys as the kicker. Guys get that edge and they think, "Oh, I'm good," and there's Christo to clean it up. Like, man,
but same thing. Like Brady Klein, he started as a tight end as a freshman. He played a ton there recently. Didn't need to do as much this year because he was relied upon at inside linebacker so much.
But he also had some huge plays at key times.
When he got the ball, it was a big deal because he made a big play. None bigger than that Manheim Township just basically put that game out of reach. Oh
my gosh.
And Cam Zulinger honestly may have been the non-quarterback best player on the team, like most valuable guy around. Both ways, because he was always out there on offense, always out there on defense, and he was always one of the leaders getting the guys righted. Like if things were going astray, he was the guy. No matter what, I was always hearing him try to get things moving in the right direction. Excellent job by them. But even going back to the offensive line, and in the year we only had Derek coming back. Kind of knew what we would get from Geloso because we had seen it as a sophomore that he was going to be a big time offensive lineman. So you're like, okay, like we got two guys. Who are the other guys? Cam and Junior were a group that we already mentioned about how important they were this year. But then the emergence of Avery Manara and Jesse Edgeberger as your tackles was big. And I know they were both playing at times last year, especially obviously if the backups in the JV got in. But I believe Jesse was getting time as a sophomore when there were some injuries. So we knew there was potential there. But the way that group as a whole played most of the year, especially when they gelled together and things started really moving in Wilson's favor, it was because of that offensive line, featuring two junior tackles, which are now both back for next season, which is a pretty good thing to have.
Yes. Yeah. Hey, we've got two key guys back. and you need guys to step up around him, and that's going to be the theme. We've got some great guys coming back. Some other guys need to step up and fill in those shoes. And again, and I am sure this will be the message that they receive probably tomorrow if they didn't even get it yesterday afternoon. That starts tomorrow, essentially. That the work to fill those roles, the work to try and get back to the district championship game, the work to
I think they'll give
all
them
those
till
things.
December 2nd.
That's fair. That's fair. But that work starts soon. You can't just show up at camp in August, at HEDAC and hope to be better. That's not how it will work. So
no. So just running through to finish things out. We're probably not going to go game by game. I don't know that we needed to do that, but we're just kind of talking in whole about the tremendous season that the team had and about the players that made that happen. Obviously, losing Maddox gives the quarterback situation a question mark. That'll have to be solved throughout the offseason as well. Obviously, there is a junior coming back, rising senior in Mason Young, and who got time this year. So did rising junior Cole Peterson.
Yep.
Those will be the two in-house guys that'll be challenging for the job. Don't know.
And Johnny is there.
Right. That's right. Rising sophomore Johnny Challenger as well. So there's three guys in-house. If everyone's back and healthy throughout the offseason, those three will be the names to watch out to fill in for the departing Maddox Gruber. Already said at tight end, Michael Glover is back. You lose the other three, but having Glover back is huge, literally and figuratively. Offensive line is a place
Barima didn't get a ton of time at tight end in the varsity games. He did in some of the section games.
Right.
But he was on the field in special teams and things like that this year.
Absolutely. So Barima is someone to watch out for.
And honestly, I don't know exact, but is about Glover's size. They're two big
body.
boys.
Yeah, big bodies.
Yeah.
Receiver wise, you got Jaden Carpenter and Elijah Dean coming back.
Two guys who got a ton of time this year.
Right, got a lot of time. Made some big plays. Jaden in particular was all over the field, offensive, defensively. He is back. He'll be the rising senior next year for 2025.
And again, it all starts to run together. But I know we talked about Jaden and that defensive play, but he made plays on both sides. That one where he tracked down the guy, and was that the Cedar Crest game? Was that the second Cedar Crest game where he? Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
It was the playoff game. Yep.
But Jaden coming through on offense and defense, Eli getting all that offensive, experience. Having those guys back will definitely help.
At wide receiver or as an offensive athlete, you're looking at Aiden Kramer having some opportunities. Monty Greer obviously is back as a rising junior. He spent a lot of time at running back, but was split out wide. Could see that more happen next year with Corell Akings returning, which that's huge to have Akings and Greer back.
Yeah.
Also, Damian Greer could see more time as a rising sophomore next year. Could we see someone like Chase Herb play some offense? He was just mostly defense this year, by and large. Could he switch over and go both ways? I think you could hear from rising junior Jackson Becker.
Oh, yeah.
Offensive and defense.
Well, and honestly, in the opportunities when Jackson would get on the field, you could see that he was a playmaker. And I mean, we've known that about Jackson for a while now. But he has that playmaking ability. He certainly does.
Absolutely. So, defensively speaking, just flipping to the other side. I didn't talk about the offensive line because that one's always tough for me to figure out because other than junior, there weren't a lot of players, junior and Cam, rotating in if someone was injured or whatnot.
We were fortunate this year. We did not have to find out much depth chart wise in terms of our offensive line.
That was a blessing to. Did not go. The injury bug was non-existent for the majority of the starters and contributors throughout the season, which was fantastic.
Yeah, guys got dinged here and there. I was worried about Derek.
I was worried about Derek. Yep,
in that
against
last,
McCaskey. Yeah. But he ended up being all right.
Right.
So don't have a lot to say about offensive line possibilities just because it's tough to figure that out until they know.
Right.
So we know we got the 2 tackles back. Now it's
Right.
finding a center and 2 guards. And I know there'll be a lot of people challenging for those spots. Somewhat maybe does Malachi Tolles go both ways? He'll be back, won't be out for the playoffs this year. The transfer rule caught him, but he was an impact defensive lineman for them this year. He'll be back since he's only a junior right now. Obviously, I think you'll see Michael Glover defensively a little bit more than maybe you saw him this year. Same thing with someone like Cole Peterson. If he's not the quarterback, maybe he's playing defensively, safety, corner, contributing. Damian Greer, I think, is going to have his hat in the ring for defensive back. And there's a lot of guys back in that backfield, but having options or maybe having someone only play defense or only play offense.
Or even being able to rotate through so that you can use like somebody like, Herb plays defense, but he doesn't need to be out there every snap on defense so that he can be taking off. I don't know.
Or he doesn't have to play offense at all, and he can just stay
right.
at safety.
This is just us speculating here,
right.
obviously.
But I already mentioned Aiden Kramer as possibly a wide receiver. He'll, I think, get a first look at outside linebacker with Ethan Harding. I think the biggest area of interest defensively is who's going to line up next to E.J. Brown back at inside linebacker. Losing Brady Klein, who really came into his own this year as a linebacker. I told him last year when they moved him from end to inside linebacker, I was like, you'll love linebacker, never want to go back. And I think last year he wasn't sure if I was right about that, but this year I know he said you were right. You were right.
And again, this is purely anecdotal, and some of it is you're a senior and you're just the most comfortable. He seemed to have a lot of fun this year.
Oh yeah,
100%. which is awesome. Like he just seemed to really enjoy his senior football season, which is awesome, and that's honestly a big part of what this is all about.
Yep.
So,
Mel Gaston will be back at defensive end. I mentioned
he was he was a problem for a lot of teams.
Got better as the year went on. They'll need another defensive tackle to go with Malachi. We'll want a couple of them to keep the rotation fresh. So we'll be interested to see what happens there. They'll need a new kicker. Christo moving on.
Was a really good kicker.
He was really good this year. Hit some field goals. Was really good on PATs.
How about also shout out? I know he had the wind, but even after the personal foul, the unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, the Harrisburg kicker putting it into the end zone.
Wow,
man.
So Mark Sneed will get that opportunity. I'm guessing first.
Yeah.
He's a rising junior. He did get to kick a varsity extra point a few times when Wilson was taking it to the opponent. So Mark will probably be the first guy up there. Potential to be the new kicker next season. Just trying to go through the names of people that have been brought up to us. The only one that's really tough for us to ever judge is offensive line. That's one where it takes a while to figure out who your 5 are going to be. Having Etchberg and Manara back is a great start, though.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, I mean, just to put a final cap on things, congratulations to the 2024 team, players and coaches. Phenomenal job this year. Didn't go our way in the district championship yesterday, but massive success. Like a fantastic season overall. Undefeated run in the league. Took the section back from Manheim Township. Got the flag, the plaque, and the stuff to prove it. That'll be there forever. Always in the record books. Some of the guys' individual performances going in the record book as well. Doubted by many people for a long time and just kept proving them wrong. Ran out of gas at the end, but again, went up at the best team we played all year, probably by a large margin. And, that's the mountain to climb next.
Hey,
get on that level.
Right. You know what's out there. And the work is, you can't just hope to get better. You gotta work to make it happen. I'm confident that the coaches and guys will make that happen, just like we saw them do for this year. But yeah, it was to kind of just step back. It was a lot of fun. Like I mentioned, it seemed like Brady and not just Brady, but like a lot of those guys. But it seemed like Brady had a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was just always like, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but we were talking before the show. Getting to be there down on the field with the guys most of the season is awesome. It's one of the cool things. Like some of those guys I've known. I did not know Brady until high school football, but like some of the guys like Derek and stuff, we knew better just because we got to coach them when they were in junior high, and I had Derek in class, and like so there are just some of these guys you get to know better than others.
Yeah.
But like seeing them have so much fun and all that stuff is so cool. I really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun, and it makes days like yesterday really tough. Like, I'm disappointed, but like I'm disappointed. That's what it goes.
But you and I will be back next year,
right? I'm mostly disappointed for those guys,
right?
And
it's heartbreaking.
People
it really
upset.
is.
And this is just me in general. Seeing people upset about things makes me upset.
It makes me uncomfortable.
Seeing kids upset, and I understand why.
It hurts every year,
right? It's one of the worst.
But
that is what I try to explain this to people. That's what makes the other part fun is when you care about things, right? Like that's what makes it fun. Like sports in general, not just Wilson football.
If you're
but
apathetic,
and that's fine. Like there's some people who do not care, and that's okay. But like the joys I get from it, they also are not getting from the same things. They get them from other things, obviously. But it's a lot of fun seeing kids like grow into that and have such fun with it.
Yeah, I think I echo you what you said. On the personal level, this was one of the most fun seasons I've had over the last few years, for sure. I mean, obviously, winning helps that always.
Yeah.
But
well, that's what I said. I was like, I feel bad being like, the show tonight, not just because we only had to do 2 of these negative ones all year.
It's tough to talk about a loss.
It's incredible.
It's just so deflating and depressing. But it was an incredibly fun season, and the players had a lot to do with it because this group really embraced us. I think they really look forward to talking to us after their wins, doing the interviews, and they were always a delight to talk to. I'm glad some of the guys that we talked to a lot this year will be back next year. But it was really fun because, you and I coach at West, so we know those guys. We know half the team before they even step foot on Gursky, and we get to see them grow even more until they're seniors. But it's fun to have the guys that played at Southern feel the same about us as the guys that we coached, and that's where that's what Cam and Christo and Brady and Maddox
and as of right now it's still like, some of these kids are siblings of some of our kids' friends, and so you start to. But that gap keeps shrinking and getting smaller and smaller. And eventually it's going to be kids that I've known. Like, I think it's cool when it's the kids that I've known since they're in some 7th, but mostly in 8th grade.
Right.
Well, now some of these kids, man, I'm going to have known them for a long time.
Right, for a long time.
Which could be very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you again for a great season here on the Bulldog Hour. One last time, thank our sponsors, Maze Sandwich Shop, excuse me, MikeDragosports.com, and White Star Tours, as well as the Miller family, Andy Herr, and our 3 anonymous donors. So thank you, all the viewers and supporters of the Bulldog Hour, anyone out there watching us right now, live or taped. We couldn't do this without you as well. We appreciate all the likes and shares and the subscriptions. Continue to do that for us. Like I said, we'll be back in about 3 months, end of February, for season 11 debut, and we'll be full steam ahead for the 2025 season. And at that point, it'll only be 6 months until kickoff.
Hey,
that'll feel good to say. 9 months until kickoff, I don't like. 6 months until kickoff feels a little bit better. So, any final word, Justin? Any last thing to say?
No, just had a lot of fun this year. Thanks to the players. Thanks to the sponsors. Thanks to the coaches and giving us the access and just their willingness to let us continue to do this.
Going along with any crazy thing we cook up in the off season or during the season. Appreciate them giving us time and kind of the ability to do pretty much anything that we want to do.
Right.
So, all right. Thank you again. Fantastic year. Congratulations on the great 2024 season. We had a lot of fun, but it's time for us to go. So for Justin Raffoff, the entire Wilson football team, I'm Joe Mays. You were listening to the Bulldog Hour. And until next time, go Bulldogs.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Bulldog Hour. Want more Wilson football? Follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. or visit www.bulldoghour.com. The Bulldog Hour is a featured program on jmnjrradio.com.